Hey everyone, so we're here with Coach Cam. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So, when did you realize coaching was something you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Very early on. I always say I've known my whole life that coaching is what I want to do. I always tell the story of when I was in fifth grade. I went to Dick's Sporting Goods and bought my first whiteboard because I wanted to make sure that I was prepared in case my coach needed some help at the end of the game or needed some ideas. I would draw plays on my way back from games or just whenever we had long road trips with my family. I've known my entire life that this is what I've wanted to do. So it's pretty cool. I've been living my dream for a couple years now and I'm excited.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, name a couple people: Katie Smith, Kirsten Bell, Jessica Davenport, Kelsey Mitchell, Ohio natives. You're in Ohio, don't you?
Hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, if you to use one word to describe an Ohio basketball player, what would it be and why?
Just one word.
Just one word. The questions can't be easy. Gotta be a little hard.
Yeah. Throw in some thought-provoking ones early on. Okay. If I had to use one word to describe Ohio basketball players, I would say it's skill.
Okay.
Ohio basketball players, and I think this kind of gets categorized across the Midwest, but specifically, Ohio players are usually very fundamentally sound. We're always very skilled. I think we've had, at least from my experience, and I know from several other of my teammates that I was with growing up and the players that you mentioned, there have been some really great coaches that have come out of Ohio as well, especially at the youth level. Like I had coaches that developed my skill level very young and just making sure that we had the fundamentals down, a good knowledge of the game. And so players that come out of Ohio are usually very skilled, high IQ, fundamentally sound basketball players.
Hardest player for you to guard in Ohio.
Whew. Um,
Not that you didn't give her work, but you're like, this girl right here is kind of giving me hell right now.
hmm, that's tough. I would say there were a couple, but a girl that I used to battle with quite a bit in high school was Chantel Bostic. She played at um I can't remember the name of the high school now, but it was in Cleveland. I think it might have been East, but she went and she played at NCA&T afterwards, and I went to High Point. So we both kind of went from Ohio to North Carolina, and I played against her once in college too. But we used to go at it in summer leagues and things like that. So she was always someone that was really difficult to compete with, and we would battle pretty well back and forth. And then another one, I played against Taylor Micasell a couple times. I'm a couple years older than her, so I played against her, I think, once in high school. She was legit then, and she's still legit now. So those are two that come to the top of my mind on that question.
Awesome. Awesome. One word to describe your coaching style.
Excellence.
Excellent. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. I know you're young in your coaching career, but as a coach, what are your non-negotiables?
Attitude. I think that's something that you can control every single day, regardless of what's going on. We all have lives outside of basketball, and different things are going to happen, but you can control your attitude when you come in here and the energy that you give off to the people around you. So attitude, bringing a good attitude every single day. Um, Working hard should go without saying, but I feel like you have to say it because not everyone does it nowadays. So I think I have to say that attitude, working hard. I'm going to say excellence again. For me, I've always had very high standards for myself, and I want to surround myself with people that hold themselves to a very high standard of excellence. And that's what I mean by that is doing the best that you can at all times. And so that takes away the comparison of with other people, or I have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. We're all going to mess up, but holding yourself to the standard that I'm going to do the best that I can with the skills and the talents that I've been gifted with and that I work at. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability in whatever that is, whether it be coaching, basketball, schoolwork, whatever that means. So I want my players to hold themselves to that standard. Attitude, working hard, excellence, and just care for one another, love one another, love the people that are around you. If you don't treat the people around you right, it's not going to be a good experience for anybody. So just loving on your people, I think that's really, really important.
Like you mentioned before, you committed to High Point for Coach Hendricks. Why that school? What made it make sense to you?
I mean, I think everyone hears this when they're getting recruited, but people had told me, when you'll know. And me, I'm an overthinker a little bit, just naturally in my personality. So when I got to High Point on my visit, I loved it. I had been talking with the coaching staff, obviously, for quite a while. And then the team there was really what sold me. There's still some of my teammates that I had, they're still my best friends to this day. And they really made me feel welcome, and I could see myself fitting in with them for the next 4 years. So it was the team really that sold me. But I also, at the time, I did have a really great relationship with Coach Hendricks as well and the rest of the staff. So when I got there, it just felt like home. And I took a little bit longer. I didn't commit right on the spot because, like I said, I like to go back and think through my decision and all that. But eventually I made the decision, but I knew pretty early on that's where I was supposed to be.
Awesome. So you're a coaching minor at High Point, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Tell me about that and some valuable lessons you learned through that experience, because you're one of the first people I met personally that actually got a part of their degree in coaching. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was, I think the most beneficial thing that I did within that minor is you have to do a shadowing portion, kind of like an internship, but you shadow someone that's within the sports industry where you want to go. And so I ended up really doing my coaches, but I also interacted a little bit with the men's coaches at High Point as well, and just asked them about what they really do behind the scenes. And I was somebody, like I said before, I knew I wanted to coach since I was little. And so I would spend a ton of time in my coach's offices anyway. Like sometimes they would have to kick me out when they were like, okay, Cam, we have to do a meeting now. Like you got to go. Sometimes I did get to sit in on them if they were, too private or all that. But I was naturally in there, but just being really intentional about the questions that I asked them and just trying to get a feel for all the stuff the coaches do that as a player you didn't get to see. And once I got on this side, I realized there's still even more to that than what I saw. But I think that was probably the most beneficial part of that minor. A lot of it was just working in different sports. We had to ref some games and different things like that. Talked about dynamics that we saw within our team. A lot of athletes were in those classes. So getting the opportunity to talk with other athletes about their experiences, about their coaches and their coaching style and different things like that. So just being able to collaborate with people and shadow my coaches a little bit more in detail was beneficial, I think.
You're fairly new off your coaching career, playing career. Having been recruited and now doing the recruiting, what are some warning signs when you're talking on the phone with a recruit? And for those who are new to the process of recruiting, what are some pivotal questions that you think you ask or should want asked that we should be, doing as well?
Yeah. Well, for the first part of it, the first part of your question was just what are some warning signs, right? I mean, obviously, I think you don't get the warning signs until you really have built a relationship with that recruit, because I don't want to say it's like dating, but it's kind of like that. Like you have to get to know them a little bit because everybody's going to put their best foot forward and off the initial. So you have to continue to call them. You have to reach out to their AAU coaches, their high school coaches, the people around them as well to get a feel for who they really are, and just continue to talk with them. But some things that maybe might be a red flag, or is if like you're talking to a recruit and you're asking them basic questions about themselves. And a lot of times this is more evident when they come on campus, but you can sometimes get a feel for this on the phone as well. But if you're asking them questions that are about themselves, or questions that they probably should know, and they're constantly like, you can tell they're deferring to their parents. That might tell you that their parents are really heavily involved in their decision making, which isn't good or bad, but that might let you know, like, I might need to engage the parents a little bit more, or that might tell you, okay, this kid might be hearing a lot of stuff from their parents when it comes to playing time and how things are going and all of that. So just really being aware and conscious of the relationship with the parents. You've heard people, I'm sure, talk about at AAU games and things like that, watching their parents on the sideline too, and seeing how they interact with their kids and things like that. If you're on the phone with a recruit and they talk about they don't really like school, if that could be a warning sign. Like, if you don't do well in school now, is that going to be somebody that you have to constantly be on about their grades? Are they going to have to be having extra study hall? Like, are they going to be doing the things that they need to do to stay eligible and be on the court? So being aware of those type of things. But honestly, I think it all just comes down to trying to get to know the kid as best you can, get to know the people around them. But at the end of the day, you really don't know. When kids come in, you hope you've done your due diligence, and you hope that they're who they've portrayed themselves to be. And that's on both sides. Kids have to do the same thing. A lot of times coaches will say certain things, and then that's not the case when they get there. So you got to do the best you can, and hope for the best, and hope it all works out in that regard. And then what was the second part of your question?
Excuse me, coach. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
What
Oh,
was the second part of your question?
What are some questions that are key for you? But I think you answered it in regards to asking student athletes, but
Okay.
I think you answered that for the most
Cool.
part. You initially committed, like we talked about, to Coach Hendricks. Tell me about her coaching style.
Coach Hendricks is very high energy, passionate, loves the game of basketball, which a lot of people say that, but she really loves the game of basketball. Like I said, coaches with a lot of passion, is really good at building rapport with her players. And, I think that's why our team, we were pretty successful for the most part when I was there. Very good teacher of the game as well. I learned a lot underneath her. Worked with me a lot, developing my game. And like I said, I was always in the coach's office. And so we would draw stuff up on the whiteboard and things like that. So helpful in terms of growing me in that regard as a point guard, but also a future coach as well. So, but a very, very talented coach for sure.
Obviously you spent a lot of time with her, like we talked about just before. You've observed her a lot. What one part of her coaching style or coaching game or whatever you want to call it have you taken and say, she did this really well, and I saw the impact of this, and now you transferred that into your coaching acumen or your coaching game?
Yeah, I would say something, and this is something that she taught me while I was there as a player. I was captain, and I was named captain as a sophomore, which was very young. It was new and it was difficult at times, but something that she told me was making sure that my teammates at the time saw me. So the ones that I didn't naturally hang out with all the time, or, we have different personalities and things like that, making sure that I was present with them. And so she would ask me, like, when's the last time you went to so-and-so's room? When's the last time they saw you and you just went in there and said, hey, what do we have going on? Like, let's go get dinner or whatever. Like, have you been present in their space? And obviously that's different now that I'm coach and player, but being intentional about checking on all of your relationships every now and again. Naturally, some players and coaches gel with each other, or they start to gravitate towards one another a little bit, but just being intentional about touching base with everybody every now and again, and making sure that they know you care, you're checking in, and doing that consistently. That's something I learned while I was a player, but it helps, and has translated well in the coaching respect too.
You finished your career playing for Coach Banbury. Tell me about her coaching style.
Coach Banbury is awesome. I loved playing for her as well. I got to play for two very talented female coaches who I looked up to, both of them very much so. Coach Banbury's and Coach Hendricks are very different. Both brilliant basketball minds, both fantastic coaches that I really enjoyed playing for. But Coach Banbury is more introverted than Coach Hendricks. Like, she's not as like extroverted in her energy and all of that. But really passionate about the game of basketball as well. Brilliant basketball mind. I love the system that we played our senior year and getting to learn from her and talk about that. Very family oriented, which her husband and her son were always around at our practices and games and stuff like that. It was cool to have them around in the office. Brought a different sort of atmosphere to the environment, and it was really cool. Yeah, I mean, I love playing for both of them. They're different just in terms of their personalities, but both really talented.
Having been a player, now you're a coach, everything's still fresh to you. What was the biggest adjustment from player to coach that you had to get over? Because it's a different lens, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest adjustment?
I would say the biggest adjustment was just trying to navigate building relationships with players while also maintaining the coach-player boundary. Not that it was difficult, but it was just something that it was my biggest concern starting out coaching so young. I was 22 when I got started, and given COVID and all that, I was worried half the players were going to be older than me with red shirts and all of that, and trying to navigate that. But thankfully, in my first year, no one was older than me, and no one's been older than me yet. I got a couple close ones, but no one's older than me, so I'm grateful for that. But just, I still wanted to be intentional about building relationships with the players, and I wanted them to know that I cared about them as people, and I wanted to have that relationship and be there for them way past the time that they graduate, but also making sure that they understood, like, I'm your coach, not your friend, and just finding the balance in that boundary. But I think at West Virginia State, that's where I started, and I think in my first 2 years, I was able to do that. I built great relationships with a lot of those players, and it was what I was looking to do. So I figured it out, I think, for the most part.
Before I coached on the college level, I used to coach AAU, we're an excellence program, EYBL. And I used to always have practices with my kids, and I would ask them, about, hey, did you see Sabrina play? Hey, did you see, do you watch, Diana Taurasi a lot? Do you watch Candace Parker? Are you a big fan of Candace Dupree? And like, I'd be naming players, and like, they're kind of like,
I didn't know who they were.
Like DeWanna Bonner. They'd be like, oh, who's DeWanna Bonner? So it's just like, I noticed that a lot of today's young athletes that I coached really didn't watch the game that much on the women's side. Now I could say Luka, I could say Jokic, I could say Embiid, and they would know instantly who they were and could tell me about their game. So tell me about your thoughts on that, and how we can modify this, because we're a part of the game on the women's side, and we want the game to grow. And obviously it's grown so much in the past, 5 to 10 years, but we wanted to go to that next level. I do believe that, our athletes shouldn't have to go overseas to make a good living, but in order for that to happen, there has to be a modification in regards to the viewership. So how do you, as a young coach, think we need to approach that? How do we get our players excited about watching our peers, their peers, or, just women's basketball just in general? I know it's a hard question, but.
No, it's something that I think about pretty often, because even when I was in high school or middle school, like, I've been watching women's college basketball, and I know it's different because I knew I wanted to play and coach, but I've been watching women's college basketball for a long time, and professional basketball. Like, when I was in middle school, like, I wanted to go to Tennessee because I wanted to be like Candace Parker and play for Pat Summitt, and that's the first college team I ever watched, and that's like, it was just what I was about. And so when I would get to high school and I would have my AAU teammates that we were all trying to play in college. And I'd start talking to them, same thing you said about, such and such player. Did you see Maya Moore play last night? And all this stuff. And they're like, no, I don't really watch it. I'm like, how are you going to, you want to play college basketball, but you don't watch college basketball, or you don't watch professional basketball? What, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think one place that we can start is the players that, do watch those games. Invite your friends over, tell them to come watch it. Like, because I'm sure it might be frustrating for them too. But the players that do watch those games, bring your friends along, tell your teammates, we're going to get together and watch this. I would do that in college too, and tell my teammates, hey, this game is coming on tonight. If anyone wants to come in my room and watch it, like, I think you should, because it's going to be really good. So pulling them in that way, make it a social event, watch it that way. From the coaching perspective, or our roles, being intentional with our players about talking about the games, who watched the game last night, what did you see? Sometimes having maybe a team activity where you invite them in and we're going to watch, the semifinals tomorrow or something like that. And two, some other ideas could be like, a lot of teams have education days where they bring in elementary schools or middle schools, high schools into their gyms for a game to watch and different things like that. I think coaches being willing whenever teachers ask, or us doing the front part of it and going into schools and saying, hey, can our team come in and volunteer, or can we come talk to your middle school and high school team? Would you be interested in that? Reaching out to people that have access to kids that are younger, really showing them from a young age, this is what you could be, even if basketball isn't your sport, like just giving them that example and making sure that it's visible when they're young. Because a lot of times girls, if they decide to write off sports or just being active in that way, it usually happens at a young age. So getting to them early, and then the ones that are playing, middle school, high school, and as you mentioned, we've made a lot of progress in the past few years, but reaching out to them and being, focused on really getting the message to them and saying that we see you and we appreciate you.
So you get your first gig, West Virginia State University, Division II.
Yep.
With Coach Marshall. Okay.
Yep.
Different levels. I've coached D3. I've coached different type of levels as well before I got to the Division I level. And there are a difference in resources. Like, it's just levels to it. Levels to commitment, levels to time that you could work with the players, things like that. You played at the D1 level, so you've seen many different ways in regards to how this is handled. Tell me about your time there, how it molded you, and now you're one or two people really on the staff. So, you got to kind of, where it was a staff of 4 to 5 people, it's a little bit easier from a player perspective. You can see it, but now you're maybe one of 2, one of 3 at most, maybe probably. You're hands-on with it every day. So just tell me about that.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. There's a lot of differences between Division I and Division II. And within levels too, there's different amounts of resources at different D2s and D1s as well. You've got Power 5s, you've got mid-majors, you've got low majors, and that there aren't as many separators in the Division II level, but there still are. There's Division IIs that can operate and have a budget that are very close to mid-major D1s. And then at West Virginia State, our budget wasn't like that. And so it's, as you mentioned, very different from a resources side. You have to become creative about what you can and can't do, and still create a valuable and enjoyable experience for your student athletes. But I absolutely loved my time at West Virginia State. I'll be honest, I didn't ever think I was going to be in West Virginia. I had ridden through West Virginia a million times on my way from Ohio to North Carolina at High Point. And I always, when I would pass through there, be like, yeah, West Virginia is not for me. Like, it was always cloudy and mucky when I would ride through there. And I don't know if it was just happenstance, that's how it went, but it was actually not that bad. Like I now granted, I was in Charleston, West Virginia. There are some parts of West Virginia, it's all right. We don't talk about those, but part that I was in Charleston, it's a good area. The people at West Virginia State, fantastic. It really is. It feels like a very close-knit community. When you go in any building, you see faces that you recognize, and you start to everybody's name. And it's how are your kids doing? And oh, we were talking about this last week. How'd that go? Like there's very close community, and I really enjoyed it. And as for developing in my coaching, like you mentioned, it was just me and Coach Marshall on staff. So very hands-on in a lot of areas, which that's exactly what I wanted when I graduated. I wanted to, if at all possible, go right into being an assistant coach. And at that level, being an assistant coach with just me and Coach Marshall, I was able to get my hands in a lot of different areas. And he was fantastic. And he said that he would, and when I was interviewing for that job, but he really did and kept true to his word when he said he was going to let me do my thing and really let me get my foot wet in all the areas that I wanted to. And he really let me coach and develop and have a voice. And I'm super grateful to him for all of that. And, I think just having that responsibility, even though it was a lot and could be overwhelming at times, it's prepared me for this next step. And I think I'm not really ever probably going to truly understand how much value it gave me. But I'm very grateful. I loved working with Coach Marshall. I loved the teams that I was a part of. Those girls are amazing. And I don't think there could have been a better place to start, to be honest with you. I mean, I'll never know because I didn't start anywhere else, but from my experience, I absolutely loved it and I wouldn't have changed a thing.
You were named on the WBCA 30 under 30 list. Congrats.
Thank you.
Thoughts on that? How important was that to you? And is there anything that separates you from the pack, or looking at the other recipients that you're like, okay, like I can get a little something from these people and, take myself to another level?
I mean, I was obviously honored to receive that award. Like I said, I've known I wanted to coach a long time. I've watched and I was aware that award existed. And when I was in school, I thought, man, that would be really cool to win that or be named to that list. And to be able to be on it so early in my career was a blessing. And like I said, I'm super honored. But as far as separating myself or anything like that, I didn't really think about that in terms of when I saw the other names on the list. I was grateful to be on it and to be among the names of all the fantastic coaches that were on that list. And I think what's going to separate me will be just being myself. That's what I've done the past 2 years. I've just tried to navigate it. This is my 3rd year coaching in my career. And so I'm still learning. I have a lot to improve on, but being myself is what's gotten me this far. And I'm just going to continue to be who I am, continue to grow in my knowledge of the game and learn from those around me, and continue to be intentional about the relationship piece, whether that be with players, the other coaches on my staff, other coaches I know, the ones I don't. I just constantly want to be a student of the game and continue to pour into other people. And I think good things will happen from there, and we'll just see how it goes.
Good answer, Coach. Good answer.
Thanks.
You're at Gulf Coast now, first year there. What made this place an ideal fit for you in your journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll be honest, I was figuring that out before I made the decision to come here. Like I said, I loved my time at West Virginia State. And to be honest, before I had taken this job, I wasn't planning on leaving West Virginia State this year. I didn't have any plans of I want to be at Division I level by this year, or I want to do this by this age. Like I didn't have that in mind. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, did I have that in mind? Yeah, probably. But once I started coaching, I wanted to let my journey happen organically and to go where I felt the Lord was leading me to go. And at the time this summer, when the academic year ended this past May, I didn't have any plans to leave West Virginia State. We brought in a really talented recruiting class. We had a lot of great returners coming back, and I was excited. And I didn't have any plans to leave, but and I said that where I was at, I wasn't going to leave unless I really felt it was the right opportunity for me at the time. And I had talked with other coaches that reached out to me, and I had some other very appealing offers from great coaches and other really solid conferences, and extremely thankful to all of them. But I just didn't think it was the right move. And then Coach Semesco reached out to me and asked if I would have interest in this position. And given, his track record, people know who he is, and I've known him for a long time. He recruited me out of high school as well. We actually we graduated from the same high school in Akron, Ohio, which is so funny, but known him for a long time. And he called me, and just the history of this program and what they've been able to accomplish, and who he is as a basketball coach, a leader, a pioneer in this game, and just what they've been able to do here. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to surround myself with people that hold themselves to a standard of excellence, and excellence is the standard here. That's been proven. It's been shown for many years. And to be able to learn from Coach Semesco and the rest of the coaching staff, and to be able to contribute and be a part of the tradition here, I mean, even though and it was still a hard decision for me, because like I said, I love West Virginia State, but at the end of the day, this is something that I felt I couldn't pass up, and I'm incredibly grateful to be here.
Couple more questions, Coach. Couple more questions.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts on the transfer portal. I mean, I'm sure you probably had opportunities to leave. You finished your career, Big South Player of the Year. Your thoughts on that, the pros and the cons to that, because now you have players who can leave and not have to sit a year. They jump right into it, right into it and play. There's some positives, in regards to people being in toxic situations, but there's some negatives too. You're in the coaching side now in regards to how it affects your program as a whole. Regardless of how you treat the player, they can just leave. So give us your thoughts on the portal. Good, bad, pro portal, con on the portal.
That's a loaded question, Christian. I'm gonna be honest, that's a loaded question, but I don't love the transfer portal. I think that there are some good uses to it, but I think first, as coaches, we need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what type of environment are we creating? Are we being intentional about building relationships with our players? Are we being honest upfront in the recruiting process? Let's go all the way back before the players even get there. Are we being honest with them about our expectations that are within our program, about the expectations we have for them, about the expectations we have for ourselves, who we're going to be, how we're going to carry ourselves? Are we telling them things that they want to hear that just aren't true? But are we doing our part in being honest up front and creating, doing our best to create the environment that we say they're going to come into? And then when they're here, are we nurturing them? Are we caring for them? Are we loving on them? Are we doing the things that we said we were going to do? And don't get me wrong, as coaches, and I think players have to understand this too, as coaches, we're going to mess up. We're humans. No one is going to be perfect. There are going to be times where as coaches, we get it wrong. And I think that we have to build a space with each other to where we give each other that grace to say, okay, I'm human. I messed up this time. I apologize. Let's move forward. So that's my take on it from the coach's perspective. Now, I do think that there are a lot of times where, a place might not be the right fit for a certain player, and they might very well be happier in a different position, in a different school, in a different environment. That might be the case. And I love that for players that make a move and they end up moving somewhere else and they have a great career, a better experience. I think that's more than useful. And I think the transfer portal is great in that regard. But I also think that it does create a way out for players if it creates an unrealistic expectation. Like if I don't come in and play 30 plus minutes my freshman year and I don't have this sort of year in my first 2 years, like a lot of times, one, there aren't enough spots. We're seeing that now. Like you leave thinking that the grass is greener somewhere else rather than being where your feet are. A lot of times it's not the case. And I think that it's created somewhat of a way out. Like if things aren't going the way I wanted to right away, a little bit of impatience, like then I'm going to jump ship and I'm going to try and go somewhere else. And if it doesn't work out here, well, I'm going somewhere else. Like, and it kind of reduces the level, the required level of accountability that I think should be a part of women's college basketball or just college basketball in general. And so like you said, there are pros and cons. I think if you're in a bad situation and it's not good for you, genuinely, I think that you should be able to make that move. And I don't always agree that you should be penalized, have to sit out for leaving a situation that really wasn't beneficial for you and that may have been out of your control. I think you should be more than able to do that. But in terms of just leaving for maybe other reasons or inconvenience reasons, and like I said, we're getting a little impatient in terms of I want my success or all of this right now. Like I always think about last year when Dawn Staley talked about Destiny Henderson's journey, how she didn't play that much and played behind Ty Harris and all of that, and ends up her senior year, has just junior and senior year, plays a ton starting point guard, played a crucial role for them all season, especially in the championship, and gets into the WNBA and has a great start in her rookie campaign. Like it doesn't always have to happen right away. And I think that the transfer portal hurts the mindset of kids in that way. But there's definitely pros and cons to it. And doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So we all got to try and navigate it the best we can.
So you hit me up. I come down to Fort Myers. You guys play Duke. You get the win. All right. I'm walking to my car. I'm about to drive back to my destination. And I'm thinking, Gulf Coast is this. What do you want me to feel? When I watch you guys play, what is the one thing you want me to take home with me? Like, Gulf Coast is tough, smart. Like, what's the thing?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah, I really like that question. I'm still getting my bearings here and I'm starting to get a feel for, I know looking from the outside, I've always been an admirer of this program and have tried you could see a little bit of what they were about, but just being in it and being a part of it for a short time. I've only been here for a couple weeks, but I would say that if after you leave watching us play and, we've beaten, Power Fives and other legitimate teams before, I would say that I would want you to leave thinking we're legit. Like this isn't something that just happens, that we really put in the work here, that we are talented, we're building something. This school's only 25 years old. I didn't even know that before I got here. It literally turned 25 this year. It was originally built to be a powerhouse D2, and we couldn't get into any Division II conference in this area. And so the school had to make the jump to Division I in like its 11th year, which that's crazy when you think about that. And what Coach Demesco has been able to build here, given the limited resources that they had and with in mind that they were going to be a powerhouse D2 and all of that, it's incredible. But the work ethic that we do here and the way we go about things, we're super disciplined. We work hard. Like we're very intentional about everything that we do. The way that teaches the game to these players and these student athletes and the coaches as well, how we are going to develop. I haven't been in a ton, but I've already learned so much. It's legit. Like, this isn't, and it's going to be on the come up. So I think you would leave here thinking like, no, they're really like that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, coach, now it's your time, because I'm long-winded. I asked a bunch of questions, but maybe there's something you wished I talked about or touched upon and things like that. Speak upon whatever you want. If you have a question for me, let me know, whatever. This is your time. Or if you don't, we're good. Whatever's on you.
Yeah. Well, I would just say, when did you get started with this, and what made you want to create this podcast?
Oh, I started this last year.
Okay.
I used to be a journalist at a magazine called Slam, and I did
Yep.
all their women's basketball stuff. And obviously, I'm a young coach like you, and I love to learn. So that's why I do it. And I love
Awesome.
it. I love it.
Yeah. And this is something you kind of touched on this just now, but this is something that I like to ask almost everybody I talk to, but especially in spaces like this. What's your why? Like, why do you do what you do from a coaching standpoint, from this standpoint? Like, what's your why? Why do you do what you do?
I mean, we talked about it before we got on. And I said, there's no place I'd rather be than here with you. I do it because I love it. I've been lucky enough, for the most part in my young adult life, that I've always done jobs I wanted to do. And I made a decision to jump into college basketball, women's college basketball. And I do it because, I want to give back to a game that's given so much to me. And that's very, very important to me. Um, and I love the game. I'm a basketball nerd. I'm not gonna lie, I don't
Mhm.
hide it. I'm a synergy guy. I love to sit down. I love to watch teams play. I just love the game. I love the challenge of the game. I love helping players grow on and off the floor. So really, to me, that's why I do it. The pure love of the science of basketball, I would say.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. Well, coach, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate that. First person to ask me questions like that, that's always a great. And you take it easy.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem.